The final speaker, as you are well aware, that we had lined up tonight was Amelia Hamer, the Liberal candidate for Kooyong, who is unfortunately not with us. In the absence of Amelia being with us tonight, a member of the Kooyong Climate Change Alliance, Alex Currell, will be giving an assessment that the Alliance has made of the party's policies as part of the Scorecard Working Group, and will share that assessment of the Liberal Party's policies. Thank you, Alex.
My aim in this talk is to very briefly outline the 7 aspects of Liberal climate policy we assessed for the Kooyong Climate Scorecard. I'll also explain why we rated them as poor in all cases, the lowest score on our scale. The first area we looked at was leadership on the climate emergency. This provides the context for the more detailed policies. Our assessment was focused on the extent to which the magnitude of the problem is recognised and a sense of urgency is conveyed. Liberal policy refers to practical initiatives to address climate change, but there is no mention of the climate emergency nor any attempt to convey the need for urgent action. Peter Dutton has gone so far as to say that it's not a priority to please the people in Paris. The next policy area considered was emissions targets. As I'm sure you're aware, the Liberals have failed to announce a 2030 or 2035 target, committing only to net zero by 2050. The fate of the climate will be determined by cumulative emissions, so this lack of short or medium-term targets is deeply problematic. Moreover, it ignores our international obligations under the Paris Agreement. The third scoring area was the transition of the national electricity grid to renewables. The centrepiece of the Liberals' energy plan is the introduction of nuclear power to the grid. Government-owned power stations would be built at 7 sites by 2050, starting in the mid-2030s. There are major issues with this plan, including assumptions about cost, timing, demand, and waste disposal. But perhaps the key point is that even accepting the extraordinarily optimistic timetable assumed, it would prolong coal-fired generation and, as a result, very significantly drive up total emissions. The Climate Change Authority estimates the increase by 2050 at 1 billion tonnes from the electricity sector, plus a similar additional amount economy-wide. We next looked at the household subsidies on offer for solar panels, batteries and electrification. Here, the Liberals have been strangely silent, perhaps because of potential conflict with their nuclear policy. In the absence of any specific policy commitments or even a more general statement of support for existing subsidies, we could only give a poor score. The fifth policy area was ending approval of new fossil fuel mines. Here the picture is very simple. The Liberals vocally support a ramping up of fossil fuel mining, particularly gas. They've committed to turbocharging mining by accelerating approvals and cutting green tape. This flies in the face of the International Energy Agency's pathway to net zero, which recommends no investment in new fossil fuel supply. Next, we looked at abolition of federal fossil fuel subsidies, which currently stand at an estimated $12.5 billion per annum. Rather than reining in these subsidies, the Liberals propose an expansion. The government's capacity investment scheme has been a key mechanism to drive the transition to renewables in the electricity grid. The Liberals would modify it to include gas. In his budget reply, Peter Dutton announced an additional $1.3 billion of funding for gas-related projects, and there's been talk of more support for gas today. Furthermore, the Liberals have opposed the requirement that Commonwealth investment bodies must consider legislated emissions targets in their decisions. The final area we considered was ending native forest logging nationally. The Liberals have little to say beyond expressing support for protecting jobs in the timber industry and criticising what they characterise as the threat to the industry from Labor and the Greens. They oppose the attempt in Parliament to have logging in areas covered by state and federal forestry agreements subjected to federal environmental approval processes. Overall, I think it's fair to say that the Liberals' policies barely engage with the climate crisis, despite frequent references to zero emissions technology in their deeply flawed nuclear energy policy. However, we'll provide what detail there is on the Lighter Footprints website when we publish the scorecard in the next few days, together with a full explanation of our scoring rationale. Thank you very much.